Joining me now is the Washington bureau chief for BuzzFeed, John Stanton. Big John, let's first talk about Darrell Issa. Does Darrell Issa pay any kind of price? I mean, among the electorate, but more specifically, I mean, I cannot imagine members of the Republican caucus look at that tape and say, yes, that is the guy that we want leading the charge.
Yeah, I think, first of all, I think it's fascinating to watch Darrell Issa and Elijah Cummings operate together because, they don't like each other. You would think that Darrell Issa should have seen this sort of coming, that doing this hearing was going to set off Cummings, and he was really going to tear into him, and it definitely was a sort of a botched handling of this. Leadership is not probably going to be all that pleased, although, frankly, amongst Republican-based voters, this may play well, and House members don't have to worry about statewide sort of issues. They worry just about their own districts. And in a lot of districts, frankly, a Republican telling a Democrat that he's not going to let him talk is probably going to play pretty well. So in the end, I'm not sure that he does pay much of a price. Do
you think Issa has more room to keep litigating the IRS scandal, non-scandal scandal?
Yeah, sure. They can drag this one out for as long as they want. I mean, Whitewater got dragged out for a decade or something crazy, so they could absolutely pull this one, until certainly the end of the administration, I think. And again, because with base voters, the IRS issue still plays very, very well. Even though, like as the Congresswoman just said, that it's largely been resolved. The people that were sort of behind a lot of this stuff have been fired or resigned, and the rules are sort of not being changed anymore. It doesn't really matter. It still plays very well with conservatives, and so long as it's a good winning issue for primary voters, I suspect Republicans will stick with it.
John, let me ask you about another thing that happened on Capitol Hill today, to the dismay of many who like civil rights and democracy. The president's nominee to head the Department of Justice Civil Rights Division, a man named Debo Adegbile, his nomination failed in the Senate 57 to 52, and this seemed like a deeply political vote, as basically everything on Capitol Hill is. And a lot of Republicans came out, don't like President Obama's nominees just because they don't like President Obama. They also took issue with the fact that Mr. Adegbile had put out a statement in support or on behalf of Mumia Abu-Jamal at some point during his legal career in defense. But there were also 7 Democrats who voted against this, including Chris Coons, Bob Casey, Mark Pryor, Heidi Heitkamp, Joe Manchin, Joe Donnelly, John Walsh. A lot of those names are familiar because they are Democrats who are facing uphill re-election fights. Tell me a little bit about the tension between the White House nominating this person at this moment before the midterm elections.
Well, it's sort of fascinating. No one really paid much attention to this nomination until the last couple of days, frankly. And Republicans mounted a very strong rhetorical push against him because of the Mumia Abu-Jamal connection. The Democrats that voted against him, a lot of them, I think, found themselves stuck in a difficult spot because, he was doing his job and he was representing his client, and that is sort of what he's supposed to do.
And that's what lawyers do.
Right. And, Mumia Abu-Jamal, regardless of what you think of him, is, allowed to have counsel and competent counsel. The thing that was, to me, that was the most fascinating about it is this is a bit of Democrats sort of getting bit in the butt by what they did with the filibuster rules, because up until the getting rid of the filibuster rules, when they had nominees that there were Democrats that were uncomfortable with, they could blame Republicans and say, well, it wasn't our fault. It was all their fault. But this one, they sort of have to own this one now because 7 Democrats broke with their leadership and killed the nomination.
Well, that is a chapter that is not finished being written. BuzzFeed's John Stanton, thank you always.
Pleasure.
Coming up, we will have more on this.